Well, hello. Thanks for
Hi.
me. A bit different this time.
Just a little bit.
Not the luxury of studio and pretty lights making us look more fabulous.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just
Yes.
is what it is over Zoom. Um,
Yes.
but yeah. Well, welcome back to all of you who are joining with us for our next discussion on the second part of Corey's book. And that second part he entitled Cultivating the Spirit of Prayer. And it was a really great
Yeah.
3 chapters. Again,
Yeah.
another, inspiration kind of call to pray, but
Definitely.
also I think a little bit more of a challenge to really kind of
Very
take
much so.
stock of how we're living our daily lives
Yeah.
and how, that either is cultivating prayer or
Mm.
not so much.
Mm.
Because at the end of the day, God's not wanting to, have a bunch of people who know about prayer.
Yeah.
He is really wanting a people of prayer.
Yeah.
So yeah, what were your initial thoughts around
Yeah.
the section of the book?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it was such a call to make prayer the center of things. And exactly as you say, to go beyond the idea of knowing about prayer as an abstract or as a learning, but rather making prayer breath and life and daily practice. It was very challenging. Corey has obviously, over many, many years, cultivated a life that is shaped around prayer. And so being at kind of not necessarily the opposite end, but certainly not as far along that journey, it's very inspiring and challenging. I found myself wrestling with an instinct to push back on things and go, oh, I couldn't possibly do that. That would be, no, here are all the reasons why I couldn't fit that into my life. And so every time there's that internal pushback of, it's for me a good challenge to go put aside offense and rationale, and instead just allow God to kind of speak to you through those things. And so rather than seeing it as a criticism of what I haven't built, instead seeing it as a picture of what can be built, and then giving you really practical steps in order to be able to move towards that.
Yeah, I can totally relate. I'm so glad you said that. In that first chapter, in that section, House of Wisdom, he's really looking at that and kind of puts it on us, doesn't he? Like
Oh, for sure.
saying that, it's the way we're living our everyday lives, the consistent choices that we're making, that's in
Yeah.
making room or not.
Yeah.
And for me, I often I felt that same pushback. And when I think about my week,
Yeah.
I go to how full it feels, and
Yeah.
there's times that I do. It feels like a little bit of an offense, like where I go, I could not carve out any
Yeah.
more time
Yeah.
in my week.
Yeah.
Like this, just the bar is just being set too high for me.
Yeah.
But then quite often, when I find myself in that space with Jesus,
Yeah.
it's just like, okay, maybe perhaps there's things that have crept into my life that I've
Oh, for
allowed
sure.
to, maybe for me personally, holding as at a higher value.
Yeah,
And so then
absolutely.
making that space and making that time. But I
Yeah.
totally resonate with what you're saying, and felt that pushback and that wrestle reading
Mm,
these chapters, especially,
yeah,
time around.
absolutely. I mean, I've been kind of sitting in Matthew for a long while now, just going through a devotion on it. And one of the things when you sort of look particularly at the Sermon on the Mount and the chapters dealing with, what does life look like if we come out of those Beatitudes and structure our lives around that, I think there's a very human instinct to go, Jesus, you are really setting this bar super high. And like, how much do I have to do? Like, how bad is this thing? And if I didn't do this thing, like how much of a problem would that be? And it's just, I don't know necessarily if it's a universal thing, but I find myself that kind of internal challenge all the time of, well, I can see where you're setting the bar. And, if you're Jesus, it's be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect, which seems like quite a bar to set.
Yeah.
So you're forever going, but all right, but how much below that can I sit and still be okay?
Yeah.
And I was talking to my boss about it, and he was sort of challenging me with the idea that what if instead of reading everything in Matthew through that filter, instead you looked at the filter of how good is it that you've called us and created us to
Yeah.
be? And so what do I need to do to to come to that place. And so seeing everything Jesus says through a filter of not criticism and look how low you are, but instead look how much you've been called to, look how good it is that you've been created to be. And then through his empowerment, being able to come to that place. And so I think for me, just trying to bear that in mind too, when reading these 3 chapters and not going, what's the lack, but instead what could be, and how do I get there? So,
yeah, that's beautiful. That's a really helpful and empowering way of looking at it. It's invitational, right?
Exactly, absolutely. And so that so flows through all of the Beatitudes. It's invitational, and I think this comes through the book as well.
No, I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
That's all right.
So I guess that the next chapter in that section really does get really practical, doesn't it? And digs into this whole idea even further. And he lays out some real practical ways that we can cultivate a life of prayer. And I'm just going to list them off just in case for those people who aren't reading along, that just can kind of capture what he's saying. So those 7 things that he kind of threw out there for us to maybe see if we could try and incorporate into our lives was early morning fasting, weekly and monthly fasting, praying in tongues for extended periods of time, meditation in the Bible, mercy-based accountability, sleep, recreation, and exercise. And preaching. Just some practical ways that and steps really that we could try and see how Jesus and that life of prayer with him can become more of a central thing, much of what you were saying when we started, rather than an add-on or an ethereal type thing, something
exactly
practicing.
And in all of this, like the sentence that he used that really stood out to me is that the life of prayer is the practical, mundane choices we make every day to prioritize a time and a place and never let anything or anyone get in the way of this holy place between us and God. And so I think looking at all of those steps that you just outlined, all of that is structuring then that time and that place and those mundane choices every day. And so in saying that, the last time we were talking, I was using my commute to and from work to kind of carve out that place. Excellent. So at the moment, for reasons that, I'm not sure if you've heard, there's this virus going around. So that commute is now the 8 steps that it takes me to get from the bedroom to my lovely eldest daughter's bedroom, where I'm currently spending my work days.
Our worlds just went like that again.
It really did. And so the space that I had to carve out that prayer is no longer there. So I've been trying the early morning prayer. It's hard, only in the sense that there's a few other things that kind of creep into that time. We were laughing because in order to do this, I've put my toddler down for her sleep. And she was complaining very loudly about having to be put down for her sleep. Well, she's also teething. So we're getting lots of very early morning visits when she's kind of waking up. And so I often have a bed buddy. So praying whilst you've got someone kind of poking you in the side of the face is a really interesting challenge. And I found myself on Sunday during the worship making Play-Doh snakes, because of course that's what you do when a small person isn't necessarily as into watching a service as I am, and just saying, all right, God, we just need to be able to meet each other here, because this is the place that I have. And if I can at least carve out a heart attitude that is, despite everything else that's going around, nevertheless, I'm going to make time and space to try and connect with you. And he was incredibly gracious to me in that moment. And we were able to have that space, even as I'm rolling out Play-Doh burgers and pretending to eat them. And so I'm finding that in as much as there are things and structural challenges at the moment, that promise to be our strength in weakness and that his grace is sufficient. I really am finding that, and I'm incredibly grateful for it.
I'm so glad you shared that, because I think so many of us at the moment are in that's our day-to-day, right?
For sure.
That is our experience. There is no space. Our work and our home and our worship and all that has been crammed into this one space. And I think actually in reading this, I think that is just something beautiful for all of us to keep in mind, that as much as we would want to commune with him and pray with him, he just wants to be with us as his sons and daughters. And I think just that heart response that you're describing, like, God, exactly right. My hands are tied,
Mm.
in many ways at the moment, but my heart is still to be with you.
Yeah.
And I can't help but sense, the Father's heart. Like
Yeah.
that's enough for him, right? Just
Yeah.
that heart. God, that's enough for him to just fill every possible space that we make available,
Yeah.
even if it's those moments, because he's a good
Yeah.
Father.
He is a good father. And that's, again, he's not looking for emptiness so as to be able to criticize. He's looking for emptiness to fill. Yeah, absolutely. And again, giving yourself permission then to not have an ideal moment and not have a perfect setup and not have everything kind of structured the way that you would want it to do. If I'm lying in bed reading my devotion of the morning and I'm doing it while someone is attempting to jump on my chest, then so be it. It was delightful. That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's totally okay.
Yeah.
Totally okay. Yeah, I have been having similar experiences. I was going to say that out of these things that I've been pushing into, you were kind of pushing into silence in the car. I had just started really down this, I guess, new tangent, or just in another level of meditating on scripture. And then based on another book that I was reading at the same time about actually getting back into some memorization.
Oh, wow. Yes.
Yeah. And so I thought, no, I would like to give this a go. And I started with, Galatians. I've just been doing a bit of study on that. And, I actually really have loved it. It's been way more impactful than I thought it would be. But yet again, much like yourself, these last few weeks have really kind of thrown that, thrown a curveball, and I was on track with some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Just this, added complication of homeschool and lockdown.
Yep.
God is gracious in it all. And
totally agree.
Yeah, he meets us with whatever time and space we make available, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think the memorization thing is such a brilliant way of embedding in your heart God's word. And it's uncanny the way that he can bring to mind the right passage, the right words in moments where you just think, oh, I'm so glad that I spent the time kind of meditating on it and memorizing that. And it's a really good challenge for me as well. And I love that you're doing that.
Well, I haven't done that since I think the last time I memorized scripture was like as a young teenager, like or something like that, memory verses.
Yeah.
It just puts a different spin on it. Like in Galatians, all of a sudden I'm speaking these words of Paul and seeing these words from a completely different perspective as him as a writer and his heart, the message behind what he was trying to communicate. And it's just been really eye-opening in a different way.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. Well, that last chapter, in this part of the book was a real kicker.
Yeah.
Pray the Lord of the harvest.
Yeah.
And it was about, pushing, I guess, moving from prayer being that more personal focus, to more of an outward, but not just an outward focus, but how prayer really affects our vision and the way we see things and the way we see things. And something that he says in the book that I guess stuck with me, and I think it stuck with me, I think because it really just is very timely, I think, with what we're experiencing, with what's going on around us. And he says this, he says, not only does prayer become your inhale and your exhale, as we've discussed in previous chapters, but prayer begins to affect your vision. You start to see things differently. In fact, I believe you begin to see with Jesus' eyes. And what you see and the way you see it will move your heart in a similar way to how Jesus' heart would be moved. To see what he sees, to perceive as he perceives, it is a must in this hour. And even though I was, we were kind of preparing for this like a few weeks ago, and that stuck out to me then, even more so now. I just
absolutely.
think, we need to be a people, like you look at what's going on social media, or even just in media, like at the moment, and the division and just the atmosphere at the moment in our city. I just think we need to be, as believers, as disciples, who we're not projecting our own process or our own feelings about what's happening onto the world. But we are, through this place of prayer, we're beginning to have the way Jesus sees all of this become our way. So that we can be responding and speaking how he would be at this point in time. I think that's
Absolutely
powerful.
right. Oh, it's so powerful. There's so much fear, and it's hard not to get sucked into that place of fear and uncertainty. Um, I was listening to Mark Sayer talking to John Mark Comer and talking about the idea of Christians being a non-anxious presence in a very anxious world. And Ben Green kind of picked up on that on Sunday as well, this idea that as Christians, we are empowered to be peace and wisdom in a world that is so full of uncertainty and so full of confusion and fear. But to be non-anxious in an anxious time and place. And, I'll confess to absolutely being plagued with anxieties. I'm not getting my work done, or I am getting my work done, but it's not in a way that I would want to do it. And I'm not parenting really well. And I have no idea if my kids are homeschooling or watching YouTube. I honestly couldn't tell you 80% of the time. What's it doing to their mental health? What's going on for my clients? What's going on for my friends? There's so much, and it's so hard then to, in the natural, kind of force yourself out of that place into a no, I must be non-anxious. And so it really is only when you're in a place with Jesus that allows him to come and to be that non-anxious presence in you that you have any hope whatsoever of being that in the world. And so exactly as you said, it's so timely that we allow Jesus to come in and transform the way we think about people and we see and we perceive. The sentence that really stuck out for me in this chapter, and again, I wrote these notes kind of weeks ago before there was even a lockdown, but it was the revelation of our inability causes us to cast ourselves on him to be useful to him and his kingdom.
Yeah.
And I think that's right. It's that, again, that acknowledgement of without you, I am human and I am weak. And you didn't exclude me from your kingdom on the basis of my failings and my limitations. You died for me while I was still a sinner. God takes us as we are, all of it, and then transforms, in and through us. And so exactly as you say, this idea of saying, okay, Jesus, I'm going to make myself available and invite you to come in and then transform the way that I think, renew my mind and my heart, and also then the way that I am a presence in the world.
Yeah.
Sure.
And really, I love that. In that's what prayer is.
Yeah.
I think we reduce prayer to our words, and it is that. Prayer is all these different things that he takes us practically. But at the end of the day, prayer is that space where we're with him and he is just doing his transformative work in us, in his presence. And we're there. We've made that space and that time, and he does what only he can do. And that is the beauty of prayer. And it's him, right? It's just that you in his presence and letting him do what he does.
Absolutely. There's nothing else that can transform. There's nothing else that can diagnose the human condition, but with love and with empathy. The only God who became human and so understands humanity in all of its beauty and its brokenness. And so absolutely, that creating that space to be with the one who loves you so much that he's calling you up. For sure.
So beautiful.
Yeah, you're right. It's astonishing, isn't it? Kind of how things just are in the right time and the right season, and you think, oh, wow, God, you are incredibly good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, therein lies the discussion on the second part of this book. We've only got one more to go.
I know. Who knows? We might even be out of lockdown by the time that comes.
Yeah, I know. Let's all be praying.
Yep.
Look, I'm loving that we're doing this together. And journey, and and I think I'm constantly just so grateful seeing that even there is distance and there's been a little bit of more time in between our films, but God is working and he is teaching us things even in the midst of all of that is happening. And for those of you who are watching with us and following along, we're praying for you as well in your prayer journey. And even just out of all that we've shared, I pray that what Sean has shared and just some of those little things that we've shared that we didn't even plan to say, that just breathes fresh oxygen into you, that you find fresh grace, just a lightness in a really heavy season, that if you are, perhaps going to that, oh, I'm not praying enough and I'm not doing this enough, maybe just listen to this again and allow Jesus just to lift that shame and that pressure that he's not putting on any of us at all, that he just wants to be with you even more than you want to be with him. And any time and space that you give him with what you have, not asking us to give us something we don't have right now.
Yeah.
He just wants to give us, for us to make room with what we have, and he will meet us there.
Yeah.
So we just pray that encourages you and strengthens you.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is fresh faith in you. He's with you. He's with all of us in this season. And and we would actually love to hear from you. Remember, there's a link underneath so that we can be praying with you. We want to hear what's going on in your life so that we can be partnering together and encouraging one another. And with that in mind, bless you. And we will see you very soon as we talk about the next part of the book and all that we're learning and experiencing. So we love you and bless you.
Bye.